So I think we'll get started, and if people join, then they can join us, I guess, when they do. So good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who I haven't yet met, either virtually or over the phone or by email, my name's Elise, and I'm the partner manager here at EzzyBills. I've been working with EzzyBills for almost a year now, so it's been a really fun year, and I guess a bit of an interesting webinar to sort of have a bit of a summary of some of the features that we've built this year, and yeah, just have a chat about some of the highlights to share with everyone. I know we always send them out in, newsletters and on social media, but you can miss a newsletter or a Facebook post here and there. So we thought it would be a good idea to just bring everything together and sort of have a bit of a chat about those different features and talk a little bit about how they can benefit your business, or for those of you who are bookkeepers or accountants or cloud integrators, how they can benefit your clients' businesses. For some of the features, we'll go into a little bit more depth, and I'll do a bit of a demo. For some of them, it'll be a little bit more of a higher level, just kind of overview where we'll talk about them. But just like in all of the demos and all of the features that we talk about, we are always happy to help. Our support team is always available to help implement. So if you don't walk away today with 100% of the tools to be able to go and implement, then our support team is available to sort of help bridge the gap between the higher level information that I'm going to share and the actual technical implementation of some of the features. Like in all of our webinars, you're welcome to pop your Q&A in the chat. I'll try to get to them as we go, and if not, there'll definitely be some time at the end. Unfortunately, I don't have a colleague available to help answer the Q&As today, so if there are any that I'm not sure of the answer to, I will definitely let you know that, and we'll get back to you within the next day or two with an answer. So I think we'll just jump in. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the different features that we're going to talk about, and just a high level idea of what they are. So we'll start with approvals. And for me, approvals is my favorite part of the software. I think it just helps streamline accounts payable in a really, really seamless and really, really helpful way. So I'll speak about a couple of the enhancements we've made to the View My Approvals features. The approvals feature. So we've got the View My Approvals, and then the third, fourth, and fifth level approvals that have been added this year throughout the year. So before we could only do up to 2 levels of approvals, and now we can do up to 5. Then we'll move into the user interface for workflows. And again, that's just really some technical and sort of copy updates just to make setting up the workflows a little bit easier and more seamless. And then we'll talk about processing remittance advices, which is one of the newest features that we've really just released in the past few weeks, I think. And this really came out of people liking the statement reconciliation feature. And I know my colleague Michael demoed that statement reconciliation feature in the last webinar last month. And so we'll just talk a little bit about the remittance advice feature, which, like I said, is really quite similar to the statement reconciliation feature. We'll then speak a little bit about e-invoicing, and this is going to be a little bit more of a content piece at a high level, just to really share a little bit more information about e-invoicing and what it is and how you can use EzzyBills to start receiving e-invoices from your suppliers. We did also do a full webinar about this, where we actually had representatives from the ATO come probably about 6 months ago, but it feels like things are moving very quickly with e-invoicing, and more suppliers are starting to jump on board. So I wanted to just chat a little bit more about that. And then the fourth kind of section will be what I'm calling EzzyBills around the world. And again, that'll just be a little bit of information about some of the higher level details about setting tax codes and processing foreign language invoices, which basically means that you can now use EzzyBills anywhere around the world, which is really quite exciting. So the first thing we're going to talk about is approvals, and I wanted to start with approvals because, like I said, it's probably my favorite piece of the puzzle with EzzyBills. And the View My Approvals is really a feature that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about in the past little bit. basically what it is, and I'll show you in 1 second. At the bottom of the approval emails, there's just a button that says view all my approvals. And so for those of you who are using the approvals feature, know that when you've got someone who's approving invoices from anyone else in the business, they come through as individual emails. And so, for example, let's say I'm the approver, and here you can see I've got a string of 4 emails, and sometimes people can end up with strings of 10, 15, 20, 25 emails, and they can be a little bit difficult to keep track of which one was approved, which one wasn't approved, etc., etc. And so what we've done is you can now go into any of these emails, like the first one, the last one, one in the middle, doesn't really matter. And everything about it looks and feels the same as the approval emails have always looked like. But at the bottom, we've got this all my approvals button. And all you do is click on that button. And what you can see now is all of your invoices that are waiting approval. And so instead of having to go in and out of separate emails, you've got this one really great screen, and you can see here on the left-hand column at the top, you've got all of the invoices waiting for approval, and those are in black. Then if you've got any rejected invoices, those will be in red. And then if there's any approved invoices, those will be in green. So it provides a really nice interface to be able to toggle back and forth, see the different invoices, and approve a bunch of them at the same time. So you can just go through the list, take a quick look at the first one. Okay, look it over, want to approve it, hit approve, and then move on to the next one, etc., etc. And like in the past, you can approve, reject, or say that it's not for you. So we still have all of that same functionality, the ability to enter a PO, enter tracking, account codes, all of that information that's always been available with approvals is still available. We just have this new screen that is available to see all of the invoices at once. Now, I did mention a couple other features that we've done webinars about earlier in the year. I also gave a webinar about approvals earlier in the year, probably about 3 or 4 months ago. And so, again, this was just highlighting one of the newer features. But if you want to learn more about our approvals in general and how they work, we've got the webinar online on our YouTube channel. And if you can't find it, feel free to send me an email and I will send that through to you. And that goes through all of our approval functionality in a little bit more detail. So the next thing that we have added is 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels of approval. And we find that this is really helpful, first of all, in large organizations, but in terms of organizations we work with, especially organizations like not-for-profit, organizations funded by government grants, things like that, there seems to be a really high degree of accountability, and there seems to be a lot of people that need to approve each document. So in a lot of cases, this might not be relevant, but we found that for people who it is relevant for, they found it really, really helpful to be able to automate something that was often a very manual process. And obviously, as more and more workplaces move to, remote or at least a hybrid model moving forward, being able to automate these kinds of processes and being able to have people do these approvals remotely by email at a time that suits is really helpful. So what we do in order to do that is we go into our EzzyBills account. So just to mention it, to set up 1 or 2 levels of approval, it's in the in the settings. In this middle tab, approval and expenses, you tick the enable approval workflow, and you can set up a single level approval or a 2-level approval and put in a default approver email for either or both of those levels. So that's pretty straightforward, and that's why a lot of people think that we can only do up to 2 levels of approval, because that's kind of what's on the dashboard and what's sort of obvious to see. In order to do more, so let's say a 3rd or 4th or even 5th level of approval, we need to go into the workflow tab. And in order to create a new workflow, you need to copy an existing workflow in order to edit it. So what we're going to do is create new. We're going to copy the EzzyBills approve level 2. and create. And then we've got this rename button here, and we can call it, let's just call it level 4 approvals. So we'll do 4 levels. And again, I did show this in my webinar on approvals as well, but because it's a new feature, I just thought it was relevant to mention. And then what you need to do is for each level of approval beyond 2, you've got to put in a submit approval box and an approved box. So I know it's probably hard to see because the font is small, but you've got a submit approval 1 and approved 1, a submit approval 2 and approved 2. So then we've got to find the submit approval 3 and approved 3. And then we said we would set up a 4 level, so we'll do one more. A submit approval 4. And approved 4. And then what we've got to do is just connect these up. Make sure they're all connected. That's wrong. We want to keep the submit approval 2 and approved 2. And then we want to go from the approved 2 to submit approval 3. And then approved 3, submit approval 4, approved 4, and then the 0 export at the end. We can save the workflow, and I know the boxes have gotten very tiny, but when the workflow saves and all of the different boxes line up like that, then you know it's probably been set up properly. And then what you can do for each level of approval, similar to what you could do for the first and second levels, is set approval rules. So let's say for the first level of approval, you want a default approver. So let's say I will approve everything at the first level. And then let's say at the second level, it only needs to be approved if the invoice is more than $1,000, then you want to send it for approval. And if the invoice amount is more than $1,000, then Joe at yourcompany.com will approve it. And then we can say for the third level of approval, that if it's over $5,000, it gets sent for approval. And then at that stage, let's say it's the finance team that needs to approve it. And then the fourth level of approval, let's say if it's over $10,000, and we'll just say for argument's sake that it's the CEO that has to approve it. So that's how you set up the third, fourth, and fifth levels of approval. So again, it's in the workflow tab. You've got to put in the box in the drop-down menu, the submit approval and approved for each number of approvals that you want. So 3, 4, and 5, and you can have just 3, just 4, or just 5, or all of them. And then for each of them, you can click on the submit approval box and set the approval rules. And if we were to set an invoice now through the system, then it would basically go through all of those rules. So I would be a default approver. I would approve the first level, and then depending on how much the value of the invoice was, it would then go through the chain. So if it was a $10,000 invoice, then it would go through all 4 levels of the approval. Okay, so that is approvals. So we'll move on now to apps workflows. And so the updated user interface is really just something I wanted to mention, and something that we just saw a second ago when I was setting up that third, fourth, and fifth level approval workflows. And there's just little things here that if you've used the workflows in the past, you would notice have changed slightly. So this rename button used to be edit. And so changing it to rename obviously makes it a little bit clearer in terms of what it's doing. When you set a new workflow and then you copy a workflow, it used to just say workflow 1 or workflow 2. And now what it lets you do is it lets you when you rename it, it says copy of 4-level approval. So you actually know what you're copying instead of just creating a new name like workflow 1 or workflow 2. So it's much easier to sort of keep track of the workflows and what they are and what they do. And just some of the look and feel of this has really been updated a little bit. So that's just something to mention. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of a more substantial feature, which is processing remittance advices. So like I mentioned, we showed the statement reconciliation in the last webinar, and the processing remittance advice is very similar. So pretty much what happens if you receive a remittance advice and you just want to check the status of all of the invoices on the remittance advice, you can just email the remittance advice to a unique email address, and EzzyBills will verify that for you and send a report. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to log into a different EzzyBills account just to demo that feature. Just show you a couple of screenshots of how it works. So to know what email address to send it to, you want to go into your app section and remittance advice. And so in this case, you would send it to jbaker5.app.ra@ezzybills.com. So that would be the unique email address for remittance advices. So basically all you'd have to do is open up an email, put in that email address, upload a remittance advice, and then EzzyBills will produce a report. And so I'm just going to show you an example of what that report looks like. So in this case, here's the example of the remittance advice that we uploaded. So it had 3 invoices on it. And then here's an example of the report that EzzyBills retrieved for us. So we've got the remittance advice from Kingscliff Baker, the invoice numbers, the dates, the status of the invoices. So it would tell us if they've been paid, if they're authorized, if they're a draft invoice. So all of that information will come through. Again, with the amount of the remittance, the amount of the invoice, the payments, and then a link to Xero if you want to go back to Xero and actually see any more information about those remittances. So that's something that can be really helpful as well, something that maybe would have been done in the past in a more manual way, and now you can do it in a more automatic way. Okay, so we're going to move into e-invoicing. So for those of you who don't know about e-invoicing or haven't heard of e-invoicing, first of all, I'd recommend you do a little bit of research and reading after the webinar, because it's becoming more and more important and more relevant in Australia. And within the next 6 months to a year, there will be certain government departments and certain organizations where e-invoicing is going to become mandatory. And I think after it does become mandatory in certain organizations and institutions, it's going to become pretty much the norm, I think, in at least medium to large businesses. And I think small businesses can also save a lot of time and energy by adopting e-invoicing. And so basically what e-invoicing is, if you're not familiar, is that it's sending invoices in what's called an XML format, where they're sent from software to software. So in an e-invoicing transaction, there is no human interaction required. So it's very different than a supplier emailing you a PDF invoice, which is been common for many years at this stage. It's really about a document that is not readable by humans. It's sent in a standard format from accounting software to accounting software. And basically what this does is it really helps streamline the process. So you don't have to be manually entering invoice data into your accounting software. You don't even need technology to help you read it. The formatting is standard, and the systems that can accept e-invoices will be able to just send and accept e-invoices between systems. So e-invoicing is a feature that we built this year, and probably one of the features we spent a fair bit of time building this year and working to make sure we're up to the Australian PEPL standard. And so anybody who's a current client of EzzyBills can accept e-invoices from their suppliers. The two big suppliers that I know of that are already sending e-invoices are BOC Gas and Bunnings. And I know there's some other ones that will start sending e-invoices next year. Some of the big supermarket chains like Coles and Woolworths, probably some of the big telco companies. They've had a lot of interaction with government, really working to get their e-invoicing up and running and really be able to really start sending e-invoices. But again, we know from BOC Gas and from Bunnings, we do have clients that are already accepting e-invoices from those suppliers. And with e-invoicing, Australia is part of the PEPL network. And so this is something that's been used in Europe for close to 10 years now, and something that they were really trying to push in Australia before the pandemic. And, obviously with what happened with the pandemic, the timelines got a little bit pushed backwards, but now it's something that's very much front and center of the agenda of teaching people about e-invoicing and getting them on the PEPL network and really trying to facilitate as many transactions through e-invoicing as possible. So how do you enable e-invoicing? Well, if you're already an EzzyBills customer, it's really very straightforward. All you have to do is go into your EzzyBills dashboard, and I'm going to go back into my other one. Go into the app section, and in the bottom of the app section, we've got this PEPL access point. You just click on that. You type in the ABN number of the business that you want to add to the network. And in my case, I'm using a sort of demo ABN that the government has provided for testing. You click add to network. It'll take a few seconds because pretty much EzzyBills needs to contact the PEPL network. They need to verify that the ABN is real and that the business is real. And then in a few seconds, it should come up with a message like we just saw. Your company has been added to the PEPL network. And that's basically all you need to do to start accepting e-invoices. And then what you can do is, if you do have suppliers like Bunnings and BOC, you can contact them and say you're ready to start accepting e-invoices, and they will start sending them. And I'm sure, like I mentioned, in the new year, as more and more companies start sending e-invoices, they will be sending out communications to all of their clients asking who wants to start receiving them, who's already registered on the PEPL network. And you can say that you or your clients already are registered on the PEPL network, ready to start receiving them. Question, is that the user's ABN? Yes, that is the user's ABN. Yep, so here it just says ABN number, so all you have to do is put in the business's ABN, and that's basically the unique identifier to make sure that it's a real business, to make sure that each business is only registered on the PEPL network once. And then there's also a directory that you can see here. You could click on the PEPL directory and see which companies are in the network. So if you want to know who's in the network, who's not in the network, you can search there. And we've also got a bit of a content piece on e-invoicing if you want to read a little bit more. And like I mentioned before, if you Google it, there's lots of information available out there on the web. Okay, back to a question. The email address to send remittance advice, should it be different from the email address to send invoices? Yes, so it will be different. So the email address to send remittance advices, you can find if you go into your apps page and click on remittance advice, and it'll be your username.app.ra at EzzyBills1.com. So in this case, my username for the account is your company. So if I was just sending an invoice, I would send it to your company at EzzyBills1.com. But because this is a remittance advice, it's yourcompany.app.ra at EzzyBills1.com. And that's the case for all types of documents that are not invoices. So it would be the same for the statement reconciliation. For example, if you wanted to use the statement reconciliation feature, it would be yourcompany.app.sr at EzzyBills1.com. So you have to tell EzzyBills, if you're not processing an invoice, what type of document you're processing so that it knows how to process it correctly. No problem. Okay. Great. Okay, so we're going to move into the last section, which I'm really just going to talk about at a bit of a higher level, which is, I guess, what I've called EzzyBills around the world. And we have, I guess, officially launched in the past few months around the world. And we've done things like adding ourselves to the Xero marketplaces in more countries around the world, really as many countries as Xero functions in. Same thing with QuickBooks, and started doing some marketing in some of the target demographics that we're looking to work in. But just because there might be a country that's not our target demographic, you can still use EzzyBills in those countries if you've got, clients or colleagues or other offices of your business. You can set up EzzyBills in those countries. And one of the important things in order to do that is making sure the tax codes are right, because that's obviously one of the main things that EzzyBills does. It extracts the total of the invoice and then extracts the tax. And obviously each country, and in some cases like United States or Canada, where I'm from, even each state or each province has different tax codes. And so we've got some learning sort of set into the background to help EzzyBills know what those tax codes are in the different countries to set them. So all you have to do is, if you're creating a new EzzyBills account, so when you're registering as a new user, you create your username and email like you normally would, and we now have this drop-down menu where you can use EzzyBills anywhere in the world. And so once you choose that country, EzzyBills should automatically set the tax codes for that country, and you should be able to process documents from that country. Just as an aside, in your regular EzzyBills account, we also can process documents in foreign currencies, and the way we do that is based on the currency set for the supplier. So if you're based in Australia, but you've got suppliers sending you invoices in pounds or in US dollars or New Zealand dollars, any country, basically what you need to do is set that in the supplier details that, this certain supplier is sending you invoices in Canadian dollars, and you want them to be processed in Canadian dollars. And when you've got that set in the supplier, we'll pick up the correct currency when the document comes into EzzyBills. And the last thing I wanted to mention is also really exciting, which is processing foreign language invoices. So in terms of the tax codes and what I just spoke about, that's really more just looking at English documents and setting up different accounts around the world. This is actually where you're receiving an invoice in a foreign language, and we can help you create workflows. So just like I showed you in the approvals workflow, we were able to set up approval tasks to set up 3, 4, and 5 levels of approval. We've got similar approval we've got similar tasks in the workflow to help process foreign language invoices. So you do have to choose one language, so you can't just say process all foreign language invoices, but you could set up multiple workflows. So you could set up one workflow to process invoices in Italian and one workflow to process invoices in French and another workflow to process invoices in Spanish. And basically what we will do is we will translate those invoices to English, and then we will process them and extract the line item details. And so there's also some cool coding and some learning in the background to help with that. So that also can be really helpful. Again, if you're receiving invoices in foreign languages or working in other countries, that workflow can be helpful as well. So in terms of presentation, that's all I've got. More than happy to open it up to see if there are any other questions about anything I've spoken about or anything else about the product that's been on your mind that you'd like to know about. Okay, well, if no one has any questions, then I think we will leave it at that. So just want to wish everyone to have a great summer. It's our last webinar for the year, and I'm sure like many of you will be taking some time off over the holidays, obviously always available for any urgent support questions. But other than that, things will be a little bit quieter. Okay, we've got a question that's just come through. Why it shows email for approval and then it shows resend. Can you elaborate on what you mean, Pratik? And while I'm waiting for that, we just had a comment saying, not a question, but the statement reconciliation is making our lives much easier. Thanks. That's great feedback. Thanks so much. We really appreciate that. And like I mentioned before, that one has been a little bit more popular recently. Pratik, if you can expand, that would be helpful. I might just go back into the email approval to see if I can figure out what you mean. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand, so I might. Under search and approve section shows waiting for approval, first option and second option. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so search and approve. Let's go back into an EzzyBills account that's open. Okay, under search and approve, shows waiting for approval, first option and second option resend. So yeah, so if you want to resend, so if I'm an approver and I was on holidays and I forgot to approve the invoice, you can hit the resend button and the person will get another email with the document in order for them to sort of have it at the top of their mind, in the top of their inbox, in order for them to be able to approve it again. Okay, I sent a remittance advice to the email address under our company's app remittance advice. I got an undelivered report. Okay, so probably best to send those specific kind of questions to the support team and they would be happy to help. Those kinds of questions are a little bit more difficult for me to answer in this kind of forum about specific clients in specific accounts. So definitely send an email to support. I recommend including the doc ID, which is the number on the invoice tile. So this would be, the number starting in 126, just to make it a little bit easier for the support team to understand what you're talking about, and they'd be happy to help. Does EzzyBills identify duplicate invoice? Yes, we can identify duplicate invoices. You've just got to set it up. So what you want to do is go into the settings menu, and in the account settings tab, there is a setting that says check for duplicates. So if you want EzzyBills to check your accounting software for duplicates, you just want to tick that check for duplicate section, and EzzyBills will do that. I keep it off in my account because I use the same invoices for all my demos. But I would say in most cases, that's probably a relevant feature to have ticked. Okay, any final questions? Okay, so just wanted to thank everyone again for joining. Like I mentioned, feel free to contact me if you've got any questions, and definitely feel free to reach out to our support team with any more sort of technical questions. Oh, I think we've got another one that just came through. Just thanks for your help. Okay, no problem. Happy to help. Feel free to contact our support team. There's their email address and their phone number. And like I started saying before, have a great summer. Hope you're all able to take some time off and relax after what's been a stressful year for everyone. And wishing you a good summer and a happy new year. And we will see you all back in 2022. Thanks, everyone.